They won't be difficult neighbors or old rivals or people you never liked to begin with. The people who will drain you most silently, most completely, and most invisibly in your 70s and 80s will be people sitting at your Thanksgiving table. People who know the sound of your voice from childhood. People whose photographs are on your walls and whose names are written in the front of your Bible or on the back of old Christmas cards you still keep in a shoebox somewhere. Family. I want to be honest with you before we go any further because this is a subject that requires honesty more than almost anything else does. What I am about to describe is not a reason to stop loving your family. It is not a case for withdrawing from the people who share your blood and your history. Family, at its best, is one of the most sustaining forces available to a human being. The right family relationships in old age are among the greatest gifts life can give you. But family at its worst, family in the specific forms I am about to describe, is uniquely capable of draining you in ways that nothing else quite matches. Precisely because of the love, precisely because of the history, precisely because you cannot simply walk away the way you could from a stranger who treated you poorly. The drain is invisible because you expect it to be nourishment. The damage is slow because you keep explaining it away with love. And most seniors never fully see it until the cost has been quietly accumulating for years. I want to help you see it now, before the bill comes due. The first one is the hardest to name because it lives so close to something that looks exactly like love. This is the adult child, and I have seen this pattern in sons and daughters both, who somewhere in the transition from childhood to adulthood simply didn't make the crossing completely. They have the chronological age of an adult. They may have a job, a home, relationships of their own, but the fundamental orientation of their relationship with you never shifted from the childhood arrangement, where you were the one who held things together and they were the one who came to you when things fell apart. And now, in your 70s or 80s, when the natural order of the generation suggests that some of the support should be flowing in the other direction, you find yourself still in the same role you occupied when they were 17. Still the one who absorbs the crisis calls, still the one whose bank account is the emergency fund, still the one whose emotional energy is called upon first, loudest, and longest whenever life becomes difficult for them. I knew a woman, a sharp and capable woman in her late 70s, who told me something I have never forgotten. She said, "My son has been having a hard time for 30 years. I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Something has always been hard. When he was young, it was school. Then it was finding himself. Then it was a bad marriage. Then it was starting over. Now he's in his 50s and something is still hard. And I am still the person he calls first. And I am still lying awake at 3 in the morning trying to figure out how to help him." She was exhausted in a way that had gone so deep it had started to look like just who she was. She had stopped recognizing the exhaustion as something being done to her and had started experiencing it as simply her nature. That is what this particular drain does. It normalizes itself until it becomes invisible. The cost is real and it compounds. Every crisis call that ends at midnight costs you sleep your aging body genuinely needs. Every loan made and never repaid costs you the financial security your older years require. Every time you redirect your own emotional energy from your own needs toward their perpetual struggle, you are spending from a reserve that is no longer being fully replenished the way it was when you were 50. And the cruelest part is that the love is real on both sides. Your child is not calculating how to use you. They have simply never had to build the internal resources that would let them stop. Because every time those resources should have been built, you were there before they had to be. Your reliability, your love, your availability became the substitute for their own development. That is not your fault. You were being a good parent in the way you understood it. But recognizing it now, at this stage, and gently, lovingly beginning to hold back the automatic rescue is one of the kindest things you can do for yourself. And though they won't thank you for it immediately, for them. If you have siblings and you are honest with yourself, you know which one I mean. This is the family member who has a version of the shared past that differs. sometimes slightly and sometimes dramatically, from your own, and who holds that version not as a memory subject to the normal fallibility of human recollection, but as an established fact, as truth, as the record against which your own memory is measured and usually found to be wrong, incomplete, or suspiciously convenient. At family gatherings, in conversations that start ordinarily enough, this person has a way of introducing their version of events that quietly repositions you. A story you tell about your own childhood becomes a story they correct. A way you remember something being becomes a way it actually wasn't, according to them. Your perception of your own history becomes something that requires their approval before it can be considered valid. The drain here is subtle and insidious because what is being taken from you is not money or time or obvious energy. What is being taken is your confidence in your own experience, your sense of authority over your own life story, the basic human right to say this is what happened to me and have it stand unchallenged. After enough years of having your memories revised, a strange thing can happen. You start to doubt yourself preemptively. You start softening your own recollections before you offer them, hedging them, qualifying them, waiting for the correction you've been trained to expect. You become a guest in the story of your own life. I have seen this hollow out people who were otherwise strong. People who spent 60 years building a sense of themselves that was solid and earned and real, who find themselves in their late years quietly shrinking back from their own autobiography because one person in their family never gave them permission to own it. The correction to this is not confrontation. It rarely is at our age. The correction is a private and internal one. It is the decision to stop submitting your memories for their approval, to tell your stories without waiting for the verdict, to hold your own past with the same quiet authority you hold everything else you have earned. Your history belongs to you. No sibling's revision can take it unless you hand it over. The relative who brings the outside world into your peace. This one has become more common in recent years, and I think it deserves honest attention. This is the family member who cannot sit at your table for 30 minutes without turning the meal into a transmission. News, outrage, politics, neighborhood gossip. Some new thing they read that is very concerning and that they feel you need to know about immediately. Some story about someone who did something that proves a point they have been trying to make for years. The world outside your door is loud. You know this. You have lived through enough of history to know that it has always been loud and that most of the urgent things that demanded everyone's immediate attention turned out, in the long view, to be less final than they were presented. You have earned a certain settled relationship with the noise. You have learned with years and effort to keep your inner life from being constantly reorganized by every new alarm. And then this person sits down across from you, and within minutes, the alarm is going again. What makes this particular drain so hard to address is that this person genuinely believes they are doing you a service. They believe they are keeping you informed, keeping you engaged, preventing you from becoming one of those seniors who loses touch with reality. Their relentlessness is motivated by concern, sometimes by love, sometimes by their own anxiety, which needs an audience because it cannot sit quietly inside them and needs to be distributed. But the result for you is the same regardless of the motivation. You sit down at your own table feeling settled, and you stand up from it feeling stirred. A low-grade activation has been introduced into your nervous system, a restlessness, a low hum of concern about things you cannot change and were not thinking about until 20 minutes ago. At our age, the nervous system does not recover from that as quickly as it once did. The agitation sits. It follows you into the evening. Sometimes it follows you into sleep. You are allowed to protect your peace at your own table. You are allowed to say, gently and with love, let's not talk about that today. You are allowed to redirect. You are allowed to name what you need from a family gathering, which is restoration, not additional weight. Your home is supposed to be where you recover from the world, not where the world gets a second chance at you. This one tends to arrive somewhere in your late 70s, and it arrives so gradually that by the time you fully recognize it, it has already rearranged quite a bit of the furniture in your life. This is the family member, most often but not always a child, who has decided, usually from a genuine place of concern, that you now require managing, not help, managing. There is a significant difference between the two, and the difference is worth understanding precisely. Help looks like, I noticed the gutters need cleaning. Can I take care of that for you? Managing looks like, I've been thinking about your gutters, and I've made some decisions about what we should do. Help arrives when you've indicated a need. Managing arrives preemptively, based on an assessment of your competence that you were not consulted about. The role reversal, when it happens, carries a particular sting because it is so wrapped in love that naming the problem feels ungrateful. This person is trying to take care of you. They worry about you. Their intentions are good. And somewhere inside you there is a voice that says, they love you. You should be grateful. Who are you to push back on someone who is just trying to help? But here is what actually happens inside a person who is being managed instead of supported. A slow erosion of agency, a gradual sense that their own judgment is no longer quite trusted, that their preferences are no longer quite final, that the decisions of their own daily life are now subject to review and revision by someone younger who has decided they know better. I watched this happen to a man I knew well, a man who had run his own business for 40 years, who had made complicated decisions under pressure his whole working life, who was sharp and clear and fully present well into his early 80s. And yet his children, good people, loving people, had begun treating him as though his age had made his judgment unreliable. They reviewed his finances without being asked. They questioned his medical decisions. They discussed, among themselves but within his earshot, whether it was time to think about other arrangements. He shrank. A man who had filled every room he walked into for 40 years began arriving at family gatherings slightly smaller than he had been. The managing had gotten inside him and convinced him that the assessment was right. You are allowed to be helped. You are allowed to receive support with gratitude and grace. But you are also allowed to be the final authority on your own life. Those two things are not in conflict. Real support knows the difference between the two. I want to be tender about this one because it involves people you love in a way that is perhaps the most uncomplicated love available to you at this stage of life. Grandchildren are one of the genuine gifts of having lived long enough to see the generation that follows your children. The love between grandparents and grandchildren is a particular and beautiful thing. But there is a version of that relationship that over time can cost you significantly, and it is worth naming honestly. This is the grandchild, young adult now perhaps, or perhaps older than that, who has learned through years of experience that you are the soft place, the one who doesn't say no, the one whose love is so uncomplicated and so available that it extends reliably and without conditions to financial requests, to bailouts, to help with situations that their own parents have declined to step into. The amounts are often individually small. That's part of why it's hard to see clearly. $50 here, a couple hundred there. A loan that both of you understand will never be repaid, but that you agree to call a loan because it preserves something for both of you. Gas money, rent money for a month that becomes rent money for 3 months, help with a car payment, help with a phone bill. Each one on its own is an expression of your love. You have the money, at least for now. They need it. You want their life to be easier than yours was at that age. All of that is real. But accumulated across months and years, a pattern can emerge that has shifted something fundamental in the relationship. Your grandchild no longer comes to you only with their heart. They come to you also with their hand, and sometimes, increasingly, the hand arrives before the heart does. You can feel it when this has happened. There's a particular quality to certain visits and certain phone calls, a warmth that is genuine, but that has an agenda running underneath it, a cheerfulness that feels slightly performed in the opening minutes until the actual purpose of the call announces itself. When you notice that feeling, trust it. It is not cynicism. It is the honest read of a person who has lived long enough to understand the difference between being loved and being useful. You can love your grandchildren with everything you have and still decide that the most loving thing is not to keep providing the soft landing. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone young is the experience of having to figure it out, of discovering, as you discovered in your own young years, that they are more capable than they believed before the easier option disappeared. This last one is perhaps the most painful because it tends to live inside relationships that look, from the outside, exactly like what family is supposed to be. This is the family member who shows up, who calls reliably, who drives you to appointments and carries the groceries and sits at holiday dinners and does, by any visible measure, everything that a caring family member is supposed to do. Except that underneath all of it, visible to you even if invisible to everyone else, is a current of resentment so steady and so established that it has become the actual texture of the relationship. A resentment at the imposition, at the time, at the fact that life has arranged things such that they are the one doing this, at the siblings who do less, and the spouse who helps less, and the parent, which is you, whose needs keep requiring things. You can feel it in the quality of their presence, the slight tightness around certain requests, the efficiency with which they complete tasks that are dressed as warmth but executed with the economy of someone working through a checklist, the absence of real conversation replaced with the management of your needs, the way they sometimes seem to leave faster than the visit warranted. And the truly painful thing is this: you are grateful. You do need some of what they provide. And the gratitude is complicated by the guilt of knowing that your need is the source of their burden, and the guilt is complicated by the anger of knowing that you didn't ask to need things, that needing things is not a failure, that being 78 or 82 or 85 and requiring some support is simply what being human eventually looks like. You are caught between gratitude and guilt and a low-grade grief about the relationship you wish you had with this person versus the transaction you actually have. This one has no clean resolution. What it has is the option of honesty. Not a confrontation, not a naming of the resentment in a way that creates a scene, but a gentle private acknowledgement, first to yourself, that what you are receiving is not quite what it looks like, that the care is real, but the cost is also real, and that you deserve to know the difference. And from that honesty, sometimes a different kind of conversation becomes possible. A conversation about what this person actually needs in their own life that isn't being met. About what the relationship between you could look like if it were built on something more honest than obligation. Sometimes those conversations open something unexpected. Sometimes they don't. But at least you are no longer performing gratitude for something you have clearly named to yourself for what it actually is. All 6 of these patterns share one characteristic that I want you to hold on to after this conversation is over. None of them announce themselves. Not one of these people will walk into your life and hand you a clear sign. The drain is always dressed as something else, as love, as concern, as need, as family loyalty, as the natural extension of relationships that go back decades. That is what makes them so effective and so invisible and so costly. The recognition has to come from inside you, from that honest, quiet, practiced ability to pay attention to how you actually feel after time with someone, not how you think you should feel, not the story you tell yourself about the relationship, the actual felt experience in your body, in your energy, in your mood over the hours after. That is your instrument. It is more accurate than any outside assessment. It has been calibrated by 75 or 80 years of experience. And it is trying to tell you things that your love and your loyalty and your long history with these people keep making it difficult to hear. You are allowed to hear it. You are allowed to act on what it tells you, not with cruelty, not with dramatic confrontation, but with the quiet, firm, loving authority of a person who has spent a long life learning what is theirs to give and what is not. The years you have left deserve to be lived in the company of people and the quality of feeling that those years have earned. Don't let invisibility be the reason that doesn't happen. Thank you for being here with me today.